The night was heavy over the alien jungle, a sky filled with strange red clouds that glowed from hidden lightning. The ground was wet, mud sticking to bare feet, and the sound of chains rattled in the dark. The camp stood like a scar on the land, filled with tall fences of black stone and sharp lights made from alien fire crystals. Inside the walls, hundreds of captives sat in rows, their faces pale, their bodies weak, their spirits broken. At the center, near a pit dug into the earth, stood a young alien girl with silver skin and long dark hair that fell across her shoulders. She trembled as two guards dragged her forward. Their claws cut into her arms while they laughed in their guttural language. The girl's voice shook as she whispered words that chilled the air around her. "Bury me here, I am not breeding material," she begged, her eyes filled with despair. The guards laughed louder, pulling her closer to the pit where bodies of the rejected lay. "Not good enough," one said in a cruel tone. "Then you feed the ground." She closed her eyes. Her people had already marked her as useless, too thin, too weak, unworthy of continuing their race. To them, her only value was in her ability to bear children, and even that had been denied her. Shame and sorrow had followed her for years, but tonight she wished only for silence, for the dirt to cover her face and hide her from their laughter. Among the shadows near the edge of the camp, a pair of human eyes watched. Ethan, a soldier, stranded far from home, crouched in the mud. His breathing was slow, his grip firm on the small blade he carried. He had been moving between camps for days, studying the cruelty of this alien race. He had seen torture, he had seen cages, but something about the girl's words cut deeper than anything else he had witnessed. "Bury me here." The desperation in her voice burned into his mind. She wasn't asking for freedom. She wasn't even asking for rescue. She was asking for death. Ethan's jaw tightened. Humans had fought wars for survival, had carried hope even when their worlds were burning. To see a life begging to be ended like this filled him with a rage that no alien weapon could match. The guards shoved the girl forward, her knees sinking into the wet soil. She stared at the pit, at the broken bodies inside, and whispered again, "Please end it now." One guard raised his blade, ready to push her in. That was when Ethan moved. He slid across the mud silently, his knife flashing once in the dim light. The guard stiffened, a wet sound in his throat, then fell without a cry. The second turned in shock, eyes glowing yellow in the dark, but Ethan's arm wrapped around his neck, dragging him back into the shadows. A quick twist, a muffled crack, and the second guard collapsed. The girl gasped, staring at the two lifeless forms on the ground. Her breath caught, and she pulled herself back in fear. "No," she whispered, her voice shaking. "Leave me here. Don't save me." Ethan crouched beside her, his eyes steady, his voice low but firm. "I don't bury the living. Not tonight." Her hands shook as she tried to crawl away from him. "You don't understand," she said, her words breaking. I'm useless. I am not worthy. I am not breeding material." He grabbed her wrist, not in cruelty but in strength, holding her from slipping back toward the pit. "Listen to me," he said, his voice sharp with fire. "I don't care what they called you. You're alive. And while you are alive, you are worth saving." Her lips trembled, her eyes filling with tears she had held back for years. No one had spoken to her like that. No one had seen her as more than a broken shell. Behind them, shouts rose. Other guards had noticed the silence. A horn blew, deep and loud, echoing across the camp. Light shifted, and the shadows grew thinner. Ethan pulled the girl to her feet, wrapping his arm around her as the sound of heavy footsteps grew closer. "Stay with me," he whispered quickly, eyes locked on the path ahead. "Don't let go." The girl shook her head. "They will kill you. They will kill us both." "Then let them try," Ethan said, his voice hard. "I didn't come this far to bury you." He pushed forward, dragging her into the narrow alley between huts, moving quick as alarms echoed louder. Guards shouted orders, their torches glowing like fireflies of death in the night. The ground shook with their boots, the camp alive with Rage. The girl stumbled, weak, nearly falling, but Ethan tightened his grip. For the first time in years, her heart beat not with the wish of death, but with the shock of being wanted, being protected. As they vanished deeper into the shadows, her whisper carried with them, "Why save me?" Ethan's answer was a promise. Because humanity does not let life be buried, and so began their escape, a desperate flight through fire, mud, and fear, a journey that would change her fate forever. The jungle pressed close around the camp as Ethan dragged the girl through the narrow shadows. His breath came hard but steady, each movement controlled. Behind them, horns screamed and the alien guard shouted orders in a language filled with harsh clicks and guttural tones. Torches burned brighter, throwing long beams of firelight across the mud. The girl struggled to keep up, her thin legs stumbling with every step. She whispered again, her voice sharp with fear. "Why are you doing this? You should leave me. I will slow you down." Ethan tightened his hold on her wrist, pulling her forward. "I'm not leaving you," he said. His words cut like iron through the noise. "I didn't risk my life to watch you die." Her eyes filled with confusion. She had never heard words like that. For years, the only voices she knew were filled with judgment, with disgust, with cold cruelty. Worthless, useless, not breeding material. But this human spoke like she mattered. They slipped behind a row of cages, empty now, their bars bent and broken. Ethan stopped for a moment, pressing his back against the wall of a hut. He scanned the open ground ahead. The watchtower lights swept across the camp like hunting eyes. "We can't go through the main gate," Ethan whispered, half to himself. His mind worked fast, measuring risks, finding paths. "We'll take the old drainage tunnels. They won't think to check there." The girl frowned, her voice weak. "Even if we escape, where will we go? My people have no home. There is no safe place for me." Ethan looked at her then, his eyes burning with a fire she did not understand. "With me," he said firmly. "That's enough." For a second, her breath caught. No one had ever claimed her like that. She had always been something to discard, not something to keep. Suddenly, a guard turned the corner, a torchlight sweeping over them. The girl froze in terror, but Ethan reacted instantly. He shoved her down against the mud and moved forward like a shadow. His blade flashed once, catching the guard before he could scream. The torch dropped to the ground, hissing as it hit the wet soil. Ethan dragged the body into the darkness, his face hard, his eyes sharp. The girl shook, staring at him. He killed without hesitation, but not with cruelty. It was survival. It was protection. He did it for her. "We have to move," Ethan whispered, pulling her back to her feet. They ran again, weaving between huts as shouts grew louder. Arrows hissed through the night, striking the ground close to their feet. The girl cried out, but Ethan's arm wrapped around her shoulders, dragging her close as he moved faster. The ground sloped downward toward the edge of the camp. A broken section of the wall lay ahead, covered in thick vines and mud. Ethan pushed toward it, his heart pounding. He could hear the footsteps closing in behind them. When they reached the vines, the girl collapsed, gasping for air. "I can't," she whispered, her chest heaving. "I'm not strong. Leave me here." Ethan dropped to one knee beside her. His hand gripped her shoulder, firm but steady. "No," he said, his voice deep and fierce. "You think you're weak because they told you so, but you're alive, and that means you're stronger than you know. I'll carry you if I have to." Her eyes widened. For the first time, she saw no mockery in his face, no disgust, only determination, only defiance. He pulled aside the vines, revealing a narrow hole leading into a dark tunnel below. The smell of damp earth and rotting roots filled the air. "Down here," Ethan said, his voice quick. "It's our way out." The girl hesitated. The tunnel looked like a grave. It was tight, suffocating, filled with darkness. For a moment, her heart told her this was no escape, but only another death. Ethan seemed to read her fear. He touched her hand, steady, warm. "Trust me. I won't let you be buried. Not like this." Her breath shook, but she nodded. With trembling steps, she crawled into the tunnel. Ethan followed right behind, pulling the vines back to hide the entrance. The noise of the camp above grew faint. Only the dripping of water and the scratch of stone echoed in the darkness. The tunnel pressed tight around them, forcing them to crawl on hands and knees. Mud smeared their arms, roots tugged at their hair, but they kept moving. The girl's body was weak, but something inside her refused to stop. His words echoed in her mind. "You're alive. That means you're strong." Behind them, faint voices shouted. The guards had found the bodies. The hunt would not stop. But ahead, a cold wind touched Ethan's face, the promise of open ground. They crawled faster. At last, the tunnel opened into the wild jungle beyond the camp walls. Night air filled their lungs, heavy with the scent of rain and leaves. The alien camp's lights glowed far behind them, but for the first time the girl felt distance between her and that pit of death. She fell to her knees in the wet grass, her chest rising and falling in sharp breaths. Ethan crouched beside her, his blade still ready, his eyes scanning the trees. "You're free now," he said quietly. "But we're not safe yet." She looked at him, her lips trembling. "Why do you fight for me?" Ethan's jaw set. He looked out into the dark jungle, his voice like steel. "Because humanity defies chains, and I will never let them bury someone alive." The girl stared at him in silence. For the first time, she wondered if she could believe in life again. The jungle was alive with strange sounds. Insects clicking in the darkness, birds crying from hidden nests, and the far-off howl of alien beasts. The rain dripped from the wide leaves, soaking the ground until every step felt heavy. Ethan led the girl deeper into the wild, his hand tight around her wrist, guiding her carefully over roots and rocks. Behind them, the camp grew smaller, its lights fading into the night, but the danger had not vanished. Horns still echoed, distant yet sharp as the aliens spread out to hunt. They would not rest until every intruder was found. The girl stumbled, her body weak, and Ethan stopped, holding her steady. She dropped to her knees in the wet soil, gasping for air, her voice trembling. "You should leave me here. They will catch you because of me." Ethan knelt in front of her, his eyes steady even in the faint light. "I told you I don't leave the living behind." Her face twisted, her eyes filling with tears. "You don't understand. I am broken. My people said I was worthless. I am not strong. I cannot give life. I cannot even save myself. Why do you waste your strength on me?" Ethan's voice grew firm, his tone carrying the weight of human defiance. "Because they lied to you. They broke your spirit so you would stop fighting. But I see something they don't. You're still alive. And that means there's more inside you than you believe." Her lips trembled, but she shook her head. "You speak as if I have value, but I don't. Even my family turned away. I was left to the camps because no one wanted me. Better to bury me than to carry me." The words cut through the jungle air like knives. Ethan felt the anger burn inside him, not at her, but at the cruelty that had shaped her thoughts. He took a deep breath, trying to keep his voice steady. "Where I come from, worth is not measured by what you can give. It's measured by the fact that you breathe, that you feel, that you fight to see another sunrise. You are not a tool. You are not a number. You are a life. And that is enough." The girl stared at him, shocked. No one had spoken to her like this before. No one had looked at her as though she mattered. For years, her world had told her she was less than nothing. But this human looked at her as if she carried the fire of the stars. Her eyes dropped to the ground, her hands trembling. "I don't know how to believe you. I don't know how to believe in myself." Ethan reached forward, lifting her chin so she would meet his gaze. "Then borrow my belief until you find your own. I will carry it for both of us." For a long moment, silence stretched between them, broken only by the dripping rain. Her chest rose and fell, her breath shaky, her eyes wide. In that silence, something small sparked inside her. Not hope, not yet, but something close. Then, a branch snapped in the distance. Both their heads turned sharply. Torchlight flickered through the trees, shadows moving fast. The hunters had followed their trail. Ethan rose quickly, pulling her back to her feet. We keep moving. They're close. Her legs shook, but this time she forced herself forward. Every step was a battle against her weakness, but Ethan's words echoed in her mind. You are a life, and that is enough. The jungle thickened, the path growing harder, but Ethan guided her carefully, steadying her when she stumbled. They crossed a stream, the cold water rushing around their knees, washing away their footprints. Ethan hoped it would slow the pursuers, but he knew they were still too close. On the far bank, the girl collapsed again, clutching her chest. Her breath came shallow, fear filling her eyes. I cannot. Ethan crouched beside her, his voice calm but strong. Yes, you can. Every step you take proves them wrong. Every breath you draw is defiance. You are not broken. You are surviving. She looked at him, tears falling down her cheeks, but for the first time her voice did not beg for death. Instead, it whispered softly, uncertainly. Why do you believe in me so much? Ethan looked back at her, his face set with quiet fire. Because I have seen humans rise from ashes, and I know strength when I see it, even if you don't. The girl swallowed hard, her chest still trembling. Something shifted deep within her. She did not yet feel strong, but she no longer felt ready to be buried either. The sound of horns came again, closer now. Ethan rose, offering his hand. Come on, we fight by living. For the first time, she placed her hand in his without resistance. Her grip was weak, but it was real. Together they stepped into the dark jungle once more, hunted but not broken, two souls carrying a fragile light of defiance against the endless night. The jungle no longer felt like a place of safety. It felt like a trap tightening around them. The sound of horns echoed through the trees and the glow of torches cut across the night. Alien hunters were spreading in every direction, their footsteps shaking the ground, their growls mixing with the rumble of thunder in the sky. Ethan pulled the girl close, guiding her deeper into the shadows of the forest. The wet leaves brushed against their faces and roots snagged their feet, but he did not slow down. Every second mattered. Every breath could be their last. The girl's heart hammered inside her chest. She had never run like this before, never fought against death. All her life she had waited for an end. But now she was running from it, pulled forward by a human who refused to let her stop. Behind them, shouts grew louder. A flaming arrow streaked through the night, striking a tree and setting its bark ablaze. The fire spread quickly, climbing the trunk and lighting the dark forest with a burning glow. The girl stumbled, her voice trembling. They are everywhere. We cannot escape. Ethan caught her arm before she fell, his voice fierce. Listen to me. They may be more, they may be stronger, but I will not let them take you. We fight with every step. The fire grew, smoke curling into the air, but Ethan saw something in it. A chance. The flames created confusion, hiding their movements in the smoke. He pulled her toward the burning trees, covering her face with his arm as they slipped between the shadows of fire and smoke. The girl coughed, her eyes watering, but she followed. For the first time, she did not beg him to leave her. She wanted to keep moving because his defiance burned brighter than the fire around them. Suddenly, a group of guards appeared through the smoke, their armor glowing red in the firelight. They carried spears and long blades, their eyes fixed on the pair. One pointed at them and shouted. Ethan reacted instantly. He pushed the girl behind a fallen log and charged forward with a roar. His blade flashed in the firelight, striking the first guard across the chest. Sparks flew as metal clashed against alien steel. The second lunged with his spear, but Ethan twisted, driving his knife into the creature's throat. The girl watched in shock, her body shaking, but her eyes wide with something new, not despair, but awe. The human fought like no one she had ever seen, not with cruelty, but with a burning will to survive. Another guard advanced, raising his weapon high. Ethan braced himself, but the girl acted before she realized it. She grabbed a broken branch from the ground and swung it with all her strength, striking the guard across the head. The blow stunned him long enough for Ethan to finish the fight. Breathing hard, Ethan looked at her, surprise in his eyes. She held the branch tight, her chest heaving, her voice breaking. I didn't want him to touch you. For a moment, silence hung between them, broken only by the crackle of fire. Then Ethan nodded once, pride flickering in his expression. Good. That means you're fighting too. They moved again, weaving through the burning trees. The fire spread wildly, consuming the jungle, forcing the hunters to scatter. Smoke rolled like a curtain, hiding them as they ran toward the river. At the edge of the flames, they reached the water. The river was wide, its current strong, but it was the only path left. Ethan pulled her close, his voice steady. We cross. Here. Hold on to me, and don't let go. Her eyes filled with fear, but she nodded. Together they stepped into the rushing current. The cold water pulled at their bodies, dragging them down, but Ethan held her firmly, pushing forward with powerful strokes. The girl clung to him, her breath coming fast, her heart pounding. Behind them the forest roared with fire. The hunters' horns faded under the sound of crackling flames and rushing water. Step by step, stroke by stroke, they reached the far bank, collapsing onto the wet grass. The girl lay on the ground, gasping for air, staring at the sky. For the first time, the stars above looked different. Not as cold, not as distant. She turned her head toward Ethan, her voice weak but steady. You fight like the fire itself, and you made me fight too. Ethan looked at her, his chest rising and falling with heavy breaths. That's what it means to be alive, to fight, no matter how dark the night is. The jungle around them was alive with danger, but as they lay on the riverbank, a new truth settled between them. She was no longer just the broken girl begging to be buried. She had fought, even if only for a moment. And that meant the fire had already begun to burn inside her. The river had carried them far from the burning jungle, but the night was still heavy with danger. The air was damp and cold, the ground soft with moss, and the cries of alien hunters echoed faintly in the distance. Ethan guided the girl through thick trees until they found shelter, a hollow cave hidden behind tangled vines. Inside, the cave was dark and cool, the walls glistening with moisture. Ethan helped her sit against the stone, her body trembling from exhaustion. Her silver skin glowed faintly in the dim light, her eyes wide with uncertainty. She looked at him, as if waiting for the world to crash down again. Ethan knelt beside her, tearing a strip from his own shirt to bind the shallow cuts on her arms. His hands were steady, his movements calm. You're safe here for now, he said quietly. They won't find us tonight. The girl lowered her head, her voice soft, almost broken. Safe? There is no such thing for me, not with them, not with anyone. I am only a burden. Ethan's jaw tightened, his eyes fixed on her face. You are not a burden, he said firmly. You've been told lies so many times that you believe them. But I see the truth. You're alive, and that means you're worth saving. She shook her head, tears forming in her eyes. You don't understand. My people threw me away. They said I was not breeding material. That was my only purpose. Without it, I am nothing. Ethan leaned closer, his voice steady but fierce. That is not your only purpose, not to me. You are not defined by what they wanted from you. You are more than their chains. You are a life with your own meaning, and I swear to you, as long as I breathe, you will not be thrown away again. Her lips parted in shock. No one had ever spoken to her like that. His words felt like fire, burning through the cold walls around her heart. She stared at him, her voice trembling. Why would you risk so much for me? Ethan sat back for a moment, his gaze drifting toward the cave's entrance. The jungle outside whispered with hidden dangers, but his focus was on her. Because humanity fights for life, he said. Where I come from, no one gets left behind. Not if I can help it. That is my promise to you. The girl touched the bandage on her arm, her fingers shaking. She wanted to argue, to tell him again that she was worthless, but the words refused to come. For the first time, she felt something different inside her chest. a warmth she had long forgotten. The cave grew quiet. The only sound was the dripping of water and the soft rustle of leaves outside. Ethan built a small fire from dry branches, the flames flickering gently. The light painted their faces, showing the tired lines around his eyes and the fragile hope rising in hers. She pulled her, knees close, staring into the fire. I do not know if I can live the way you say. I have always been told I should not even try. Ethan's voice was calm but strong. Then let me show you. You don't have to walk this road alone. If you cannot believe in yourself yet, then believe in me. I will carry that weight until you find your strength. Her eyes glistened, her lips trembling. She whispered softly, almost to herself. No one has ever promised me anything before. Ethan looked at her, his expression unyielding. Then remember this night. Remember that a human promised you a future. Not as a tool, not as a prisoner, but as someone who matters. She lifted her head, her gaze locking with his. For a long moment neither spoke. The fire crackled, shadows danced on the walls, and the storm outside faded into silence. In that stillness, a fragile bond formed, a bond born not from survival alone, but from something deeper. At last, she leaned her head against the cold stone wall, her eyes closing. For the first time in years, she felt safe enough to rest. Ethan stayed awake, his blade resting on his knee, his eyes watching the entrance. He would not allow harm to touch her again. As the night stretched on, he whispered softly to the fire, words she could not hear. They may call you broken, but to me you are whole, and I promise I will prove it to you. Outside, the jungle waited with danger, but inside the cave, for the first time, the girl carried not the weight of shame, but the fragile light of hope, and that hope was planted by the human who had refused to let her be buried. The morning came slowly. Sunlight pierced through the thick canopy of the jungle, sending golden rays into the cave. The girl stirred, her silver skin glistening faintly in the light. For a moment she thought she was still in the camp, waiting for another day of pain. But when she opened her eyes, she saw Ethan sitting near the fire, sharpening his blade. He looked tired, but his eyes were alert, steady, alive. She sat up weakly, brushing the dust from her arms. A strange warmth filled her chest, a warmth she had not felt in years. Safety, hope, but doubt still clung to her like shadows. Ethan noticed her movement and gave a small nod. You should eat, he said, handing her a piece of dried ration from his pack. You'll need your strength. She took it hesitantly, chewing slowly. The food was plain, but it was more than she had been given in weeks. She looked at him, her voice quiet. Why do you keep helping me? You could have left me last night. You should have left me. Ethan leaned forward, his voice firm. I told you before. I don't bury the living. You deserve more than what they forced on you. You deserve to live. Her eyes lowered. But what if I don't know how to live? All I know is chains. All I know is shame. Without it, I am lost. Ethan's expression softened, though his tone stayed strong. Then, you start fresh. Living is a choice. Every breath you take, every step you make, it's you choosing life. You don't need permission from them, you only need your own will. The words struck her deeply. She held the ration tightly, her hands shaking. Could it really be so simple? Could living be a choice? She thought of the night before when she picked up the branch and struck the guard. For a heartbeat she had felt alive, not useless, not broken, but powerful. That memory warmed her now, even as fear tried to choke it away. A distant horn broke the silence. Ethan's head snapped toward the jungle. His eyes narrowed. They're still searching. Fear returned to her face. She whispered, They will. Find us. They always find us. Ethan rose, his voice steady as stone. Let them come. I won't let them take you. She stared at him, her chest tightening. He fought not just for himself, but for her. Why? Why would he risk everything for someone who had begged for death? Her voice cracked. Ethan. Why do you keep fighting for me? He turned to her, his gaze sharp, his words carrying weight. Because life is worth fighting for. Because you are worth fighting for. And if you can't see that yet, I'll see it for you, until you do. Her breath caught. Something shifted inside her. A fragile crack in the wall of despair. Slowly she rose to her feet, unsteady but determined. She met his eyes, her voice trembling but stronger than before. Then, I want to try. I want to live. Ethan gave a faint smile, the first she had seen from him. That's all I needed to hear. Before they could speak further, movement stirred outside the cave. The sound of boots crushing leaves, voices growling commands. The hunters had found their trail again. Ethan gripped his blade tightly, positioning himself at the entrance. He glanced back at her. Stay behind me. No matter what happens, remember your choice. The girl's heart raced, but instead of collapsing into fear, she pressed her back against the stone and clenched her fists. For the first time, she did not want to give up. She wanted to live. The first guard burst through the vines, spear raised high. Ethan struck with lightning speed, driving his blade across the creature's chest. A second lunged, but the girl reacted. She grabbed a rock from the ground and hurled it with all her strength, hitting the guard's head and staggering him, long enough for Ethan to finish the fight. Her breath came fast, her eyes wide. She had acted again. She had fought again. When the cave grew silent, bodies lying still at the entrance, she turned to Ethan. Her voice was filled with disbelief. I helped. Ethan looked at her, pride burning in his eyes. Yes, you chose life, and you fought for it. Tears slid down her cheeks, but they were not the tears of despair. They were the tears of someone who had glimpsed a new path. She pressed her hand to her chest, whispering, I don't want to be buried anymore. Ethan nodded. Good, because now you're living, and once you choose life, nothing can take it from you. As the fire of dawn lit the jungle, the girl stood straighter than before. She was still weak, still fragile, but the shadow of death no longer ruled her. For the first time, she carried her own choice. The sun was climbing higher, turning the jungle gold. The smoke from the burned camp still floated in the distance, but here in the open, the air felt fresher. Ethan and the girl moved carefully through the tall grass, their steps slow but steady. Each mile they put between themselves and the camp was a victory, but Ethan knew the danger wasn't gone. The hunters would keep searching. The girl's body still carried weakness, but her spirit no longer bent under the same weight. She had chosen life, and that choice lit a fragile fire inside her. Every time her legs shook and she wanted to fall, she remembered Ethan's words, "You are worth saving." They reached a clearing where the ground sloped down toward a valley. In the distance, metal glistened under the sunlight. A wrecked human transport ship lay broken between the trees. Ethan's eyes narrowed with hope. If we can reach that, we might find supplies. Maybe even a signal. The girl followed, his gaze, her voice soft. And then you will leave this world? Ethan turned to her. Not without you. Her chest tightened at his words. She had been thrown away by her own kind, but this human claimed her without hesitation. It felt unreal. Like a dream she feared might vanish if she blinked too hard. They began the descent, but movement in the trees stopped them. Alien scouts emerged from the shadows, weapons raised, their armor black and sharp. The hunters had found them again. The girl froze, but Ethan stepped forward, his blade ready. His voice dropped low. Stay behind me. The scouts advanced, their voices echoing with cruel laughter. To them, she was still worthless, and Ethan was nothing more than prey. But Ethan's eyes burned with fire, the kind of fire only humans carried. The first scout lunged, spear thrusting forward. Ethan sidestepped and struck hard, his blade cutting deep. Another rushed in, but Ethan fought like a storm. Every move, sharp and precise. Still, they were too many. The girl's breath came fast, panic clawing at her chest. But then she remembered the cave, the branch, the rock she had thrown. She remembered choosing life. and with trembling hands she bent to grab a sharp stone from the ground. When one of the scouts slipped past Ethan and reached for her, she struck with all her strength, slamming the stone into the creature's head. The alien stumbled back, hissing in pain. Ethan finished the fight, driving his blade through its chest. Silence fell. The last of the scouts collapsed into the grass. The girl dropped the stone, her chest heaving, her eyes wide with shock. I fought again," she whispered. Ethan turned to her, his face fierce but proud. "You did more than fight. You chose to live. That's what makes you free." Her knees gave out, and she sank to the ground, tears spilling down her cheeks. But these were not tears of despair. They were tears of release, of breaking chains she thought would hold her forever. She looked up at Ethan, her voice trembling. "I was nothing to them. But with you, I feel like I am something." Ethan knelt beside her, resting a hand gently on her shoulder. "You are not something. You are someone. And to me, you matter." The girl lowered her head, her heart pounding in a way it never had before. For years she had begged for death, but now she begged for life. She begged silently to never lose this feeling, to never lose him. Together they rose, moving toward the wrecked transport. Inside, Ethan scavenged broken panels and a cracked comm device. It sparked faintly, alive enough to send a signal. He worked with steady hands, glancing at her every so often, making sure she was safe. Hours passed, and when the signal finally blinked green, Ethan let out a long breath. Help would come. Humanity would hear. The girl sat beside him, the firelight of the broken console glowing on her face. She whispered softly, almost afraid of her own words. "Ethan, I never thought I would live to see tomorrow. But now, I want to see many tomorrows. With you." Ethan looked at her, his expression softening. "Then we'll see them together." Days later, when rescue came, the girl stepped onto a human ship for the first time. She looked back once at the jungle, the place where she had begged to be, buried. The place where her spirit had almost died. And then she looked forward, toward the stars, toward the new life waiting ahead. Months passed. Her body grew stronger, her spirit brighter. And one quiet morning, she touched her stomach with trembling hands and realized the impossible had happened. She carried new life inside her, something the aliens had sworn she could never give. Tears filled her eyes as she turned to Ethan, whispering the words that carried all her rebirth, all her hope, all her love. "You gave me back my life, and now I carry yours." For the first time, she was not begging for death. She was begging for life, for tomorrow, for the future. And with humanity by her side, she knew she would never be buried again.